Alright, over the last 3-4 years, I've played a rather unhealthy amount of Long War. Seemed like a waste to let all of that experience go by the wayside, and this set of probably 4 videos will detail how I personally build all of my classes on Iron Man Impossible, separated by Supra class. Obviously, this video will be heavily based on one of these, but there will also be objective information about Long War in general. I will of course have my own personal biases, but if you think for some god-forsaken reason that Rocketeers are the greatest class, you are certainly entitled to have that opinion, as wrong as you may be. To begin with, this first video will be surrounding the creatively named Scout Sniper Supra class. Scouts. They're a class I used to hate before I learned to embrace holo-targeting early game and in the zone everywhere else. Their main caveat is that they don't have a spectacular power spike until Tech Sergeant, but they're still decent soldiers with holo-targeting for aim bonuses and lightning reflexes to run Overwatch. If you build them like an in-the-zoner, they'll be relegated to a pretty basic shotgun frontliner and meld grabber up until they reach Tech Sergeant, where their efficiency goes through the roof. There are 2 main scout builds which I think are worth considering. The first is an early game babysitter who is destined to have their limbs chopped off and turned into Pathfinders. They take a marksman rifle, holo-targeting, Deadeye, battle scanners, hit and run or concealment, sprinter, and any Master Sergeant perk. This type of scout sits just behind your line of vision, firing at targets the rest of their squad can see to provide the holo-targeting bonus. They can also look for flanks just outside of vision. They'll be your best bet against floaters and drones early game, thanks to Deadeye and the holo-targeting that they'll provide your team. Then, all of the 35% that your infantry are prepared to chuck become 45%. It may not seem like much, but that extra 10% can be really impactful. As previously mentioned, this build is very much designed to babysit your early game troops that have poor aim, as well as to support infantry in trench warfare. They aren't nearly as powerful in the late game and should practically always be turned into Pathfinders, who, conveniently, are my personal favorite mech class. The other scout build, which scales much better, practically doesn't turn on until Tech Sergeant. They'll be equipped with a shotgun instead of a strike rifle, and will be missing out on the utility of holo-targeting. Instead, they'll be taking Lone Wolf alongside Ranger or Low Profile, Aggression, In the Zone, Bring 'em On, and Extra Con. To explain how to properly use this scout, first, you must learn a little bit about how XCOM is an extremely jank experience crafted by the one and only Jake Solomon. There are many examples of this, but the one most relevant is that if an alien, and any alien mind, can see a single member of your squad, then all of them know where your soldiers are. Breaking line of sight completely, referred to as breaking loss, makes the alien AI not very good. This clip is kind of the perfect example. This door broke in just about every single way it possibly could have, and the line of sight through the doorway was bugged completely. So how do you use this information about breaking loss practically? Well, an in-the-zone scout loves to approach your group of enemies by staying out of line of sight, and then when close enough to do so, run past all of them in a blue move, and abusing in-the-zone's free actions to kill them all. The rest of your squad can soften them up if need be, but the shotgun already does an insane amount of damage. You don't even need to worry about Overwatch when you're doing this, because scouts have lightning reflexes anyway. As for scouts' place in the game and on a squad, it can really vary. Regardless of build and weapon choice, they'll always try to be relatively far away from the squad. Holo-targeters from behind and in-the-zoners in front. With holo-targeters, they play a pretty passive role and live to help the squad from a comfortable distance while providing some utility. A bit like an engineer with an actual gun. Especially if you take smoke and mirrors at Master Sergeant. In-the-zoners will take a little bit more finesse to work properly. You almost never want to run into the fog to secure a flank unless you're absolutely certain it's not going to activate more pods. You want to make the aliens move into you, and be absolutely sure that a flank you're taking isn't going to activate the entire map. But hey, if the entire map is already active, that just means you can romp wherever you please, right? But yes, You want to rebound into an aggressive alien pod with the scout most of the time, especially early on when you're not a flying fortress of doom. The shotgun's high base damage also makes an in-the-zone scout vital for dealing with chrysalids. Hope to God that they all charge forward in a big conga line, throw an AP grenade at them, plant your scout in front of them, and let in-the-zone do the rest of the work. Bringing multiple scouts per mission is not recommended. The only way it might be okay is if they're using very opposing builds, because then they play practically entirely differently. Even then, though, if you have a scout within the zone, the holo targeter is probably largely irrelevant on that operation anyway. Here's what I would bring on an in-the-zoner at Ballistics, Gauss, and Plasma. The scout is a dedicated motion tracker holder early on, but generally tend to morph into using support grenades or a neural gun link when motion trackers stop being super relevant, alongside standard HP items. By the time I got to Gauss, my holo-targeting scouts were either dead or mech'd, so I never buy marksman rifles past beam lasers. With the scouts covered, let's move on to the other half of the superclass, the sniper. They're a rather, let's be generous here and say, infamous class for missing vital shots, but that being said, I love them. The sniper rifle is an entirely unique weapon, as it's the only weapon in the entire game that has effectively infinite range. Line of sight is technically needed, but in reality if your squad can see a target, whether or not your sniper can shoot them is pretty much entirely a matter of your sniper's own personal opinion. Sometimes they just feel perfectly up to shooting through 4 walls.
He's down.
I only ever run snipers with a single build, the same one on every campaign. Lone Wolf, Snapshot, Ranger, VPT, Lock and Load, and In the Zone. Before I go into why this build is my favorite, I want to go into why I don't use some of the other competitive perk choices. There's a solid argument for disabling Shot over Snapshot, as it can disable high priority targets like discs. However, I always found more damage to be all I ever needed, and for discs specifically, suppressing them makes them do nothing or Overwatch basically all of the time. I personally wouldn't ever bring a sniper to a mission where I'm trying to get captures or level up rookies, but you can use disabling Shot to help with that. Just bring an arc rifle instead, it does the same job and you can put it on an engineer. Precision Shot is a viable alternative, but can be very one note, and if it misses it's a complete waste. It isn't even a guaranteed crit. I take Snapshot because it's very simple and it's always going to be helping you every single turn. There's no cooldown in being able to move and shoot, it's a bonus that's going to be useful 100% of the time. It makes getting flanks from vision less of an exercise in luck and can be very satisfying. Precision Shot and Disabling Shot can be useful perks, don't get me wrong, but in return you're sacrificing too much in my opinion. So, what is this build good for? Well, its purpose is very simple. Similar to Scouts, you want to murder everything within the zone, and I do mean everything. Snipers and Scouts are similar in that they're both the only 2 classes with access to the perk. Where Scouts run up into the enemy and kill everything with their shotgun, Snipers sit in the very corner of the map, getting cheap flanks and free kills, all while being in very little danger themselves. Snipers operate very differently before and after Archangel. Before, they're a decent unit that can be really good on certain maps with flat terrain and, maps that won't have massive line of sight obstructions. After you get Archangel, though, they become a demigod of death and destruction that practically works on every single map and whose effectiveness is basically unmatched. It's not even hard to set up either. It's pretty common for me to just ascend immediately from wherever the Sky Ranger drops my squad off and sit there for the rest of the mission, picking off an average of 1 enemy per turn if not more. It's not unusual for snipers to end up with hilariously out of whack mission to kill ratios as their kit is built for kill stealing and kill securing. A pre-Archangel sniper is not bad though, not even slightly. On certain maps they can be just as effective with some long sight lines. I would also argue that despite their, reputation, early game snipers are actually incredibly effective soldiers. With a steady weapon the previous turn, and maybe some height advantage, you can easily hit 70s or even 80% through cover at basically any range. Assuming your sniper decides that they have line of sight anyway. With 2 of them on an operation, this is a lot of damage to be outputting every turn at no risk to those soldiers. Speaking of which, snipers are incredibly effective in number. I wouldn't really recommend more than 2, but a sniper team properly spaced for Lone Wolf to proc is incredibly effective. On certain maps like the Cemetery Bomb mission, Snipers have access to huge sight lines, and the sniper team can work together to punch targets through cover at ridiculous ranges. This is also surprisingly viable early on, as it'll be power leveling your snipers to Master Sergeant, where their effectiveness increases tremendously. I don't really build snipers past Gauss. The Gauss sniper, while having extremely little ammo, can be brought up to 4 with lock and load, high cap mags, and the Ammo Conservation Foundry project. It gives you a massive amount of damage with heat ammo, so much so that I always found it surpassed even plasma snipers in usefulness. Thanks to lock and load, you can still fire 8 shots per turn, assuming all kills are against flanked targets. This will practically never happen already, but if you really wanted to theory craft, you could fire 4 shots, reload, fire another 4 shots, grenade your own sniper, revive them, reload with the extra free action, command them, fire another 4 times, and then they'll have the last shot be against a Muton or Berserker that successfully lands their Intimidate check, and then you Psi-Inspire your sniper to get an extra action to reload again. Please do not attempt this in practice. Here's what I would bring on a sniper at Ballistics, Gauss, and Post-Archangel. As previously mentioned, the Gauss long rifle is pretty much all you'll ever need, so Pulse or Plasma Sniper really isn't necessary in my experience. I always bring a spare medikit onto my snipers just in case a mission manages to go really wrong. They don't need the spare slot much anyway, their base aim is good enough to not warrant a scope when you get to Gauss. So, you remember that image I showed at the beginning that showed my hours in XCOM? That was about a week ago. Let me just pull it up now. Yeah. This video took a really long time to make. Regardless of if this video bombs, I'm still gonna make the, other 3 videos that I promised at the beginning, so there's a red button if you wanna stick around for that.